Welcome to Heartfelt Revenge Stories. What kind of useless garbage did you bring me? That was what he said. Standing there in his powder blue polo shirt, champagne in one hand, 30 guests watching, string lights glowing warm across the patio I had scrubbed on my hands and knees since before sunrise. He said it loud enough for every single one of them to hear. And then he hit me. Open palm. Right across my left cheek. The sound cracked through the air like something breaking that was never meant to be touched in the first place. I stood there with copper on my tongue, a wallet on the flagstone floor between us, and 30 people suddenly fascinated by their champagne flutes. I didn't know it yet, but that slap, that one moment, was the last thing Robert Harmon would ever do to me. Because by midnight, I would be sitting in the back of a black SUV across from a stranger who would say 7 words that would unravel 21 years of lies. But before I get there, please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. Because I need you to know, wherever you are right now, this story is for you. My name is Melissa, though for most of my life I was forced to answer to Claire. I am 22 years old, and I want to take you all the way back to that Saturday morning. The morning Robert Harmon turned 55. The last day I ever spent under his roof. I set my alarm for 5 in the morning. Same as every Saturday. But this particular Saturday came with a 2-page handwritten list that Sandra, that's what I called her, never Mom, though she always corrected me in front of company, had left on the kitchen counter the night before. Sweep the patio. Arrange the folding chairs, 34 of them. Press the white tablecloth. Slice the lemons into perfect rounds because last time they were uneven. Hand wash the serving platters because the dishwasher leaves water spots and Robert's guests cannot see water spots. Their house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in a suburb of Richmond, Virginia. A 4-bedroom colonial with a lawn Robert hired someone to mow but told the neighbors I maintained. Inside, solid oak furniture, polished by me every single week. On the counter sat 2 cases of wine and a 3-tier fondant cake from a bakery that charged more per slice than I made in an hour at my restaurant job. My room was downstairs. Not the finished basement with the game room and the flat screen. The storage closet. The one next to the water heater. No window. A twin mattress Robert had pulled from a curbside pile when I was 9. A wool blanket that smelled like damp cardboard no matter how many times I washed it. Ha ha ha. I remember actually thinking, if I just wash it one more time, it will smell like something clean. I was 9. I believed a lot of things that weren't true when I was 9. Brianna's room was upstairs. Queen bed. Vanity mirror ringed with Hollywood bulbs. A flat screen she watched from a bed with an actual headboard. She was 24 and had never learned to boil water because boiling water was what I was for. I had spent 3 months saving for Robert's birthday gift. A leather wallet, real leather, from a department store downtown. $87. Which sounds like nothing unless you are earning $11 an hour scrubbing sheet pans at a restaurant called Della's off Route 1. I wrapped it in brown craft paper because I could not afford a gift bag. I wrote on the front in my best handwriting, "Happy birthday." I didn't know, standing there in that kitchen at 5 in the morning with flour still dusting my wrists, that wallet would be the last thing I ever gave that man. Robert came downstairs at 10. Polo shirt, designer label, the big embroidered logo, powder blue. Khakis creased like blades. Cologne that reached me before he did. He walked the patio like a general inspecting a battlefield. He moved one balloon cluster 6 inches to the left. He stared at my lemon arrangement on the pitcher. Without looking at me, he said, "They're uneven. Do them again." Sandra appeared at noon. Pearls linen dress, hair perfect. She ran a finger along the counter and leaned to Robert and whispered something she thought I couldn't hear. "She only got you something cheap. Just brace yourself." Ah, I heard every word. And I stood very still and sliced the lemons again. Evenly this time. As evenly as I possibly could. Brianna arrived last. New dress, new highlights, heels clicking across the floor I had waxed at 6 that morning. She handed Robert a smartwatch, top of the line stainless steel, $700. Charged to the supplementary credit card Robert gave her for what he called emergencies. Robert opened the box and beamed. He kissed her forehead. He said, with his arm around her, in front of the first guests walking through the door, "This is my girl. She always knows what her old man likes." He did not look at me. He never did when other people were watching. I was the girl who carried trays, refilled glasses, wiped condensation rings off tables before they could set. When a woman from Robert's office asked Sandra, "Shouldn't Claire sit down and eat with everyone?" Sandra smiled, warm as a locked door, and said, "Oh, she likes to help. It's her way of showing gratitude. You know how it is with the adopted ones." I kept carrying trays. The gift opening happened at the patio table with everyone gathered around Robert like he was something sacred. Champagne flutes catching the string lights. Brianna perched on the arm of his chair filming everything on her phone. Sandra stood behind him, one hand on his shoulder, radiating the image of a woman who had it all figured out. I came forward with the craft paper package. For just 1 second I thought he might smile. He smiled sometimes. Not often. But sometimes. He tore the paper, pulled out the wallet, flipped it open, flipped it shut. Then he held it up over his head like evidence at a trial. "What kind of useless garbage did you bring me?" The chatter stopped. Forks paused midair. Someone set a glass down too carefully. My head snapped sideways from the impact of his hand. A champagne flute fell from the table and shattered on the stone floor. And for 1 full second that shatter was the only sound in the world. No one moved. Except one person. Helen Morrison. The neighbor from next door. 72 years old and barely 5 feet tall. She stood up from her chair and said, "Robert, that was completely uncalled for. He told her to stay out of his family business." She sat back down. But she did not look away from me. And I have never forgotten that. Not once. I stood there with a bruise already blooming purple across my cheekbone, and something inside me, something quiet and cold, started counting. I did not go back to the party. I went to the storage closet. I pulled the navy backpack off its nail on the wall, faded blue, zipper fraying at the edges, the only thing that had followed me since high school. I packed what I had. 2 shirts. 1 pair of jeans without holes. A toothbrush. A phone charger. A manila envelope I had found in the bottom of a box Robert threw out months ago. The one with a government seal I didn't fully understand yet. And from inside a shoebox beneath my mattress, $360 in 1s and 5s. Tip money from Della's that I hid because Robert checked my bank account. $360. A backpack. A bruise. That was everything I owned in this world. I walked through the living room on my way out. The party had resumed. Robert was laughing at something someone said, champagne in hand. Brianna was showing guests something on her phone, probably the video. Sandra stood at the window and watched me cross the front yard. She reached for the curtain, and she pulled it shut. Nobody called my name. Outside, the October air hit my cheek and the bruise flared like a second slap. Suburban dark is different from city dark. There are no bodegas lit up on the next corner. Just wide streets, widely spaced streetlights, and silence that feels deliberate between the houses. I walked along Patterson Road with no destination. Just away. Behind me, the bass notes from the party got quieter and quieter, until there was nothing at all. I had made it about 2 miles when headlights slowed behind me. A black Cadillac Escalade. Clean. Tinted windows. Came to a stop 10 feet ahead. The rear door opened. I should have run. Every instinct said run. But I was already so exhausted from running from things. I thought maybe, just this once, I would see what was running toward me. A man stepped out first. Mid-50s. Tall, lean. Dark coat. Not flashy, just the kind of coat that fits like someone measured you for it. His hair was dark, threaded with silver. His eyes were hazel green and wide-set and catching the streetlight. They were the exact same eyes I saw every morning in my bathroom mirror. Behind him, a woman. Shorter. Red-haired. Sharp-featured. Carrying a leather portfolio like she'd just come from a courtroom. She kept her distance. Professional. Watchful. The man's hands were trembling. I could see that even in the dark. "I'm sorry to frighten you," he said. His voice cracked on the second word. "My name is Daniel Whitmore. And I believe I am your biological father." I took a step back. My shoulders hit a mailbox post. That's not possible. My biological parents didn't want me. That's what I was told. He looked at me with those hazel green eyes, the ones that matched mine down to the flecks, and he said, "You were told wrong. If you want to know what he pulled out of his coat pocket next and what it showed me, do not go anywhere." Because what happened in the next 5 minutes is the moment my entire life split in two. Stay right here. I promise you, you need to hear this.
He reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled out a photograph. Small, creased at the corners. Clearly handled 1,000 times, maybe 10,000. A woman holding a toddler. The woman had auburn hair and cheekbones like mine, and a smile that leaned slightly to the left, the same way mine does in every photo anyone has ever taken of me. The toddler had hazel green eyes. Her name was Caroline. Daniel said, "She was your mother. She died in a car accident when you were 2 years old. And I have spent every single day since then trying to find you." I looked at the photograph, then at him, then at the photograph again, because the woman in it had the same mouth I did, the same tilt of the head. Looking at her face felt like finding a word you had been searching for your whole life, the one that was always right there on the tip of your tongue and just wouldn't come. The red-haired woman spoke. "My name is Patricia Hale. I am Mr. Whitmore's attorney, specializing in family law. We are not here to take you anywhere you don't want to go. We have been monitoring your situation through legal channels for several months. Tonight, when our investigators saw you leave the house, we made a decision to approach. You were watching the house?" Patricia nodded. "The birthday party. Many guests. It was the safest opportunity to confirm your identity visually." She paused. "We also saw you run." I touched my cheek without thinking. The bruise pulsed under my fingertips. Daniel looked at the mark on my face. Something behind his eyes broke very quietly. We sat in the back of the Escalade. Daniel on one side, me on the other. Patricia in the front with her portfolio open. The engine was running. The heat was on low. It was the warmest I had been all night, and I realized sitting there that I could not remember the last time I had been genuinely warm without working for it. Daniel told me the story the way a man tells something he has rehearsed for 19 years and still isn't ready. Caroline died on the interstate eastbound on a Tuesday morning in March. A delivery truck crossed the median. She was killed instantly. Daniel was in the passenger seat. Shattered pelvis, collapsed lung. For months in the hospital. I was at home with a neighbor when it happened. While I was in the ICU, he said, "Child Protective Services placed you in emergency foster care. Standard procedure." "I understand that," I said. What I didn't understand was what came next. When I got out of the hospital and filed to bring you home, he said, "They told me I couldn't." A social worker named Marcus Webb handled the case. Webb told the family court that I had signed a voluntary relinquishment of parental rights. He presented the court with a form bearing my signature. The judge approved the adoption. He stopped. I was on a ventilator. I couldn't hold a pen, let alone read a legal document. But the court had a piece of paper with my name on it, and that was enough. I felt the air leave my lungs slowly. By the time Daniel hired a lawyer and challenged the ruling, it was too late. The adoption had been finalized. The file was sealed. His daughter had a new name, a new family, a new address somewhere in Virginia that he was not permitted to know about. So I hired investigators. Year after year. His voice didn't waver when he talked about the years. It wavered when he said, "I would have spent everything I had." I looked at him in the low light of the Escalade. "Marcus Webb," I said, "how much did they pay him?" Daniel looked at Patricia. Patricia closed her portfolio. "That is what we intend to prove in court. Now let me pause here for just 1 second, because I need to ask you something. Have you ever had someone in your life who held you close not because they loved you, but because they needed something from you? Someone who made you feel worthless while quietly collecting from you? Drop a comment right now. Just say yes or no. I want to know how many of you are still carrying that. Because I didn't know yet what I was about to pull out of my backpack. But when I did, everything shifted. I told him about the envelope. Earlier that year, Robert had decided Brianna needed a yoga space in the house. That meant clearing the storage closet, my room. He tossed my belongings into garbage bags and left them at the curb. I had gone through those bags before the truck came, because that's what you learn when nothing you own is protected. You check. You say what you can. At the bottom of a water-damaged cardboard box, underneath old report cards and a Ziploc bag of baby clothes I didn't recognize, I found manila envelope, official looking, government seal in the corner. Virginia Department of Social Services. Inside was a single document, partially redacted. Heading, Title IV Adoption Assistance Monthly Disbursement Summary. And across the top, typed in plain government font, Claire G. Harmon. I didn't know what Title IV meant. I didn't know what a disbursement summary was. But my name was on a government document that Robert had never once shown me. So I folded it and put it in my backpack. I had been carrying it for 6 months without fully understanding why. I pulled it out now and handed it to Patricia. She unfolded it under the dome light. I watched her expression change. Not dramatically. The way a careful person's face changes when the last piece of a puzzle slides into place. This is the adoption subsidy record. She looked up at me. The state of Virginia has been paying Robert and Sandra Harmon approximately $810 per month for your care and maintenance. For 18 years. She looked at me steadily. That is approximately $175,000. How much of it did you ever see? I thought of the mattress from the curb, the closet with no window, the blanket that smelled like cardboard, walking an hour and a half each way to Della's because no one would drive me. No doctor after I was 14. No ID. No birth certificate. No Social Security card in my own possession. None, I said. I never saw a single dollar. Daniel turned his face toward the window. In the reflection of the dark glass, I could see him pressing his jaws shut so hard the muscle along his cheekbone jumped. All those years, I said, half to myself. He called me a burden, but I wasn't a burden. I was a paycheck. If you've ever been someone's paycheck while they told you to be grateful, while they looked you in the eye and told you that you owed them, I want you to tell me that in the comments, because that sentence right there, I was a paycheck, that was the sentence that changed everything inside me. Patricia drove us to a hotel off Broad Street, not the Harmon house, not a shelter, somewhere clean and quiet and safe. Daniel checked us in under his name, separate rooms, adjoining door. And the first thing I did when I stepped into my room was stand in the middle of it and not know what to do. The bed had white sheets that smelled like detergent instead of mildew. There was a window. I opened the curtains and stood there looking out at the parking lot lights for a long, long time, because looking out a window from my own room was something I had not done in years. I started cooking the family's meals when I was 10. Robert said it was to teach me responsibility. By 12, I was doing all the laundry, all the dishes, all the grocery shopping on foot. Brianna got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a bus pass that expired after a month because nobody renewed it. Robert never let me keep my own documents. When I asked for a driver's license at 17, he said, "What for? You don't have anywhere to go." I thought he was right. Now I understood he had designed it that way. 2 weeks before the party, he had called me into his home office, the room no one entered without permission, mahogany desk, leather wingback chair, a shelf of hardcover books arranged by color that he had never once opened. He sat behind the desk like a judge, pushed the document across the surface, 10 or 12 pages, dense print, a blue signature tab at the bottom. "This is a voluntary agreement," he said. "It states that you choose to remain under my guardianship because you are not financially or emotionally prepared to live independently. Sign it." I picked it up. Most of the language was impenetrable, but on page where there was a clause, I understood perfectly. The agreement authorized Robert to continue managing all state and federal benefits associated with my care. He wanted my adult signature so he could keep collecting the subsidy even after I legally aged out of the system. "Why do I need to sign this?" I asked. "Because without this family," he said, "you are on the street. You don't have a degree. You don't have savings. You don't even have an ID. So you are going to sign this before my birthday. Consider it your gift to me." I did not sign. I asked for more time. Robert said nothing. He just closed the folder and placed it back in the desk drawer. Slowly, the way you place a loaded gun in a safe. That is why he hit me at the party. It was never about the wallet. It was because I had told him no for the first time in 18 years. And he could not stand it. Don't go anywhere, because in the next part, the DNA results come back. And what happens when I walk into that courtroom? What Donna does, what the judge says, what Gerald says on those courthouse steps. I promise you are not ready for it. The lab was a low brick building off Carey Street. Clean, clinical, fluorescent lighting and the smell of antiseptic. A technician in pale blue scrubs swabbed the inside of my cheek. Then Daniels labeled the vials. Told us results would take 3 to 5 business days. 5 days. I had waited 21 years to know who I was. 5 more felt like holding my breath underwater. While we waited, Daniel brought things to the hotel room. Not gifts in the way Robert gave gifts, as transactions, as leverage, but pieces. A photograph album. Caroline pregnant, laughing on a porch swing with one hand resting on her belly. Caroline holding a newborn, wearing a pink knit hat. Daniel and Caroline and the baby in front of a brick bungalow in Richmond's fan district with a red front door. That's the house you came home to, Daniel said quietly. I still own it. I couldn't bring myself to sell it. I studied each photograph like a document I had to memorize. My mother's face, her hands, the way she stood. Weight slightly shifted her left foot, a small lean that wasn't quite a slouch but wasn't quite upright either. The same way I stand when I'm not thinking about it. She's beautiful, I said. You look exactly like her, Daniel said, especially the eyes. On the 5th day, Patricia called. I was sitting on a hotel bed with the album open to a photograph of Caroline blowing out birthday candles when my phone rang. I just looked at it for a moment before answering. 99.998% probability of paternity. Patricia's voice was steady and precise. It's confirmed. Daniel Whitmore is your biological father. I didn't say anything for a while. I just held the phone and looked at the photograph and felt something crack open in my chest. Not break, not shatter, but open the way a door opens when someone finally turns a handle from the other side. 99.998. A number, just a number. But for me, it was the first proof in 21 years that I was not an accident nobody wanted. Patricia's voice came back. Now we have enough. The next step is family court. The morning of the hearing, Patricia converted the hotel conference room into something that looked like a war room. A long table, 5 stacks of documents, each flagged with color-coded tabs. I sat at one end with a cup of coffee going cold between my hands while she walked me through it. Calm, precise, leaving nothing to chance. Stack 1, DNA results. Accredited lab. Chain of custody documented. Irrefutable. Stack 2, forensic handwriting analysis. The signature on the relinquishment form was not Daniel's. The examiner's report ran 46 pages, but the conclusion was 1 sentence. Stack 3, financial records from the Virginia Department of Social Services. Robert and Sandra Harmon received $810 per month in Title IV adoption assistance for approximately 216 months. Total, $174,960. The social worker's assessment confirmed the funds were never used for my welfare. Stack 4, that full assessment. Neglect findings. No medical records after age 14. No identification documents in my possession. Living conditions inconsistent with the stated purpose of adoption assistance. Stack 5. Patricia paused. A sworn declaration from Helen Morrison, my former neighbor. 72 years old and 5 feet tall. She had agreed to testify that she personally witnessed ongoing patterns of unequal treatment, and that she had watched Robert Harmon strike me across the face at a birthday party in front of 30 people. Ruth had stood up that night when no one else would. And now she was going to stand up again. Do I have to say anything in court? I asked. Only if you want to, Patricia said. Daniel, sitting at the far end of the table, had been quiet through the entire briefing. Now he spoke just once. Whatever happens in there, he said, you've already won. You're free. I looked at the 5 stacks of documents. A lifetime of lies, dismantled into tab folders. No, I thought, I haven't won yet. But I am about to. Richmond Family Court. A Tuesday morning in late October. The building was old federal brick, column entrance, hallway floors that echoed every footstep like the building itself wanted to announce who was coming. I arrived at 8:30. Navy blazer. White blouse. Hair pulled back in a low knot. No jewelry. I didn't own any, but my hands were steady and my back was straight. Robert arrived at 8:40. Gray suit. Burgundy tie. Sandra on his arm, Brianna trailing behind in something too casual for court. His lawyer carried a single thin folder. Robert carried his chin at the angle of a man who believes this is merely a formality. Then he saw us. His eyes went to me first, registered the blazer, the posture, the absence of the girl who used to stare at the floor. Then they moved to Daniel, then to Patricia, then to the banker's box of records being set on the plaintiff's table. Robert's face didn't crumble. It recalibrated, the way a calculating man's face shifts when he realizes there is one variable he missed. Sandra's hand tightened on his arm. Robert, and I made eye contact across the hallway. For the first time in my life, I did not look down. The clerk opened the courtroom doors. In the matter of the adoption of the minor formerly known as Melissa Whitmore, now styled Claire Grace Harmon, we walked in. Both sides. Same door. Different worlds. Patricia addressed the judge, the Honorable Judge Sandra Waverly, without notes. Your Honor, we are here today to present evidence that the adoption of Melissa Whitmore, known for the past 18 years as Claire Grace Harmon, was obtained through fraud. Specifically, the forging of a biological parent's consent to relinquish parental rights, facilitated by a direct financial payment to the case-assigned social worker. She presented the DNA results first. 99.998%. Judge Waverly examined the report, adjusted her reading glasses, and set it aside with a small nod. Then the forensic handwriting analysis. It is my professional opinion, Patricia read aloud, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that the signature on the voluntary relinquishment of parental rights dated October 2004 was not produced by Daniel Whitmore. Robert's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client has a legally executed adoption decree approved by this court system nearly 2 decades ago. The petitioner is attempting to relitigate a settled matter based on a hired expert opinion. Patricia did not turn around. Your Honor, a decree built on a forged signature is not settled. It is concealed. We are here to unconceal it. I heard Helen Morrison shift in the gallery behind me. Then Patricia moved to the financial records. And this is where the air in the courtroom changed. She projected the disbursement summary onto the screen, the same document I had pulled from a garbage bag 6 months ago, and the numbers appeared in plain view, month by month, year by year, a column of figures running down the screen like a ledger of my entire childhood. Mr. Harmon, Patricia turned to him. The state of Virginia paid your household $810 per month in adoption assistance for the care of this child over approximately 18 years. That totals $174,960. Can you tell the court how those funds were allocated toward the child's welfare? Robert straightened. Everything went to the girl. We fed her, clothed her, kept a roof over her head. 18 years of that isn't cheap. Patricia nodded as though she had expected exactly this answer, which she had. Then she called the social worker assigned to review Daniel's petition to the stand. He spoke without inflection, which made every fact land harder. The child's living space was a converted storage area adjacent to the home's water heater, approximately 60 square feet. No exterior window, no closet. The mattress showed visible wear and water damage consistent with curbside salvage. I found no medical records of the child after age 14, no dental records, no immunizations after middle school. The child had no state-issued identification, no Social Security card in her possession, and no documented access to her own adoption file. He looked at the judge. In my professional assessment, Your Honor, the conditions described and observed are consistent with child neglect, not with the intended purpose of adoption assistance funds. Sandra began to cry, soft at first, then louder, the performed kind of crying that draws eyes. Then Helen Morrison took the stand. She wore a navy cardigan, sensible flats, and she did not perform anything. I lived next to that family for 12 years. I watched that girl mow their lawn, wash their cars, hang laundry in the backyard while their biological daughter sunbathed on a lounge chair. I never once saw Claire or Melissa sit at their dinner table when guests were present. And on the night of Mr. Harmon's birthday, I watched him strike her across the face in front of 30 people because she gave him a gift he thought was beneath him. The courtroom went quiet in the way a room goes quiet when everyone in it is recalculating what they thought they knew. Then Patricia turned back to Robert. Mr. Harmon, do you know a man named Marcus Webb? Robert didn't blink. No. Patricia placed a photograph on the projector. Two men at a folding table at an outdoor event. One was Robert, 10 years younger. The other wore a Virginia DSS lanyard. This photograph, Patricia said, was taken at a church community picnic in June 2003, 1 year before the adoption was finalized. The man beside you is Marcus Webb, the social worker assigned to Melissa Whitmore's case. Do you still maintain you don't know him? Robert's jaw worked. I may have met him. Church events are large. I don't remember every face. You remember him well enough to send him $5,000. Patricia placed a bank statement on the projector. Robert's personal checking account. A wire transfer. Recipient, Marcus Webb. 1 week before the adoption was approved. Can you explain this payment? That was a community contribution, routed directly from your personal account to Mr. Webb's personal account, not to any church fund, not to any charity. Direct, account to account. Robert turned to his lawyer. His lawyer was staring at the table as though searching for an exit inside the wood grain. No objection came. I gave that girl everything. Robert's voice cracked upward, sharp and sudden. He was on his feet now, one hand flat on the table. 18 years. A home, food, a roof. And this is the thanks I get? Some stranger shows up, and suddenly I'm the villain? Mr. Harmon. Judge Waverly's voice was low. Final. Sit down. Now. He sat. But the room had already heard it. The mask cracking. The entitlement spilling through. The church women in the gallery stared at their laps. The courthouse reporter's pen moved faster. Patricia turned to the judge with the composure of someone who had just watched her opponent do her job for her. Your Honor, we like the court to note Mr. Harmon's characterization of his parental role as something he gave and from which he expects repayment. That is not parenting. That is a transaction. Then she looked at me, and I stood up, because I need you to stay right here. What I said in that courtroom, what happened 30 seconds later, what Sandra did that nobody expected. Don't you dare click away. Because the next part is where everything breaks open. Your Honor, I'm not here for revenge. The word sat in the air for a moment, and I let it. I'm here because for 21 years, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my own name. I didn't know my mother's face. I didn't know that someone was looking for me. I didn't know that the papers that placed me in that house were built on a forged signature. I paused. I breathed. Mr. Harmon said he gave me everything. Here is what everything looked like. A storage closet with no window. A mattress pulled from someone else's curb. No doctor after age 14. No identification. No birth certificate. I didn't know my own social security number until 3 weeks ago. I worked in that house from the time I was 8 years old. Cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, running errands on foot because there was no car for me. And I was told every day that I should be grateful, that without them, I was nothing. My voice did not break. I had decided it wouldn't. He struck me at his birthday party because I gave him a wallet I had saved 3 months to buy. But the truth is, he struck me because I would not sign a document giving him continued control over my finances and my life. That is what I was to him, not a daughter. A line item on a spreadsheet. I looked at the judge. I am not asking this court to punish Robert Harmon. I am asking this court to tell the truth, because I deserve at least that. Every child in that system deserves at least that. I sat down. The room was very still. Helen Morrison was crying in the gallery, the real kind of crying, quiet and private and not for anyone else. Daniel sat at the table beside me with his hands folded, knuckles white. He was holding himself very still the way you hold yourself still when you're afraid of breaking something by loving it too hard. And then something happened that no one in that courtroom expected. Sandra stood up, not from the witness stand. She hadn't been called. She stood up from the respondent's bench, smoothed the front of her dress, that automatic, composed gesture she used for everything, and said in a voice that shook like a wire pulled too tight, "Your Honor, I have something I need to say." Robert grabbed her wrist. "Donna, sit down." She pulled free. It was the first time I had ever seen her pull free of anything. The $5,000 to Marcus Webb. I wrote that check. Robert told me it was to expedite the adoption process. I wrote it from our joint account. And I knew what it meant. Robert's lawyer put his head in his hands. Robert went red from the collar up, a deep, mottled crimson I had never seen on his face before. She's lying. She's confused. She's trying to protect herself. I am trying to protect myself. Sandra's voice cracked high and desperate. Because I have been protecting you for 18 years, and I cannot do it anymore. I watched you hit that girl. I watched you work her like hired labor. And I said nothing. I said nothing because I was afraid. I was afraid of exactly this. Judge Waverly let her finish. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. Brianna sat in the gallery, mouth open, phone untouched in her lap for the first time I could ever remember. Mr. Harmon, the judge said, and her voice carried the full weight of someone who has seen a great deal and is still capable of being appalled. One more outburst, and I will hold you in contempt. Robert sat rigid as stone, and for the first time in my life, I saw him afraid. Judge Waverly took 12 minutes to review the final documents. I know because I watched the analog clock on the courtroom wall. The kind with second hand that ticks instead of sweeps, and I counted every rotation. When she looked up, she addressed me first, Ms. Whitmore, and I will use that name now, because the evidence before this court compels it. The court has reviewed the petition, the forensic handwriting analysis, the financial records, the testimony of the independent social worker and the neighbor witness, the DNA results, and the statement made voluntarily by Mrs. Harmon. She removed her glasses. The evidence is unambiguous. The voluntary relinquishment of parental rights filed in October 2004 bears a signature determined by certified forensic analysis to be fraudulent. The biological father, Daniel Whitmore, never consented to the termination of his parental rights. The adoption that followed was built on a foundation of forgery, and based on financial evidence, was facilitated by a direct payment to the case-assigned social worker. She looked at Robert. It is the ruling of this court that the adoption of Melissa Whitmore, styled as Claire Grace Harmon, is declared void ab initio. The adoption is annulled in its entirety. Sandra made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Furthermore, this court orders Robert and Sandra Harmon to make full restitution of all Title IV adoption assistance funds received, totaling $174,960, to the Commonwealth of Virginia. Finally, this court is referring the matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of potential criminal charges, including forgery, fraud in connection with public assistance, and child neglect. The judge set down her papers. The child's legal name is restored to Melissa Whitmore effective immediately. The gavel came down. That single wooden sound was the loudest thing I had ever heard in my life. Louder than the slap. Louder than 18 years of silence. It sounded like a lock opening. In the hallway outside the courtroom, I was walking toward the exit with Daniel on one side and Patricia on the other when I heard heels behind me. Fast, uneven, the sound of someone not used to hurrying in shoes that weren't built for it. Melissa, wait, Brianna. Her makeup was ruined. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, which was strange, because she had always taken up so much space. I didn't know, she said. She was breathing hard. About the money, the subsidy. I thought Dad's salary. I thought it was... She stopped. She couldn't finish the sentence, because the sentence ended with your money. And saying it out loud would make it real in a way she wasn't ready for. I looked at her. The girl who had gotten the smartwatch, the car, the queen bed, the credit card that never declined. The girl who had filmed the moment her father hit me on her phone and hadn't moved from her chair. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to walk away, without a single word. But what I felt standing there, with my legal name just restored, with my actual father beside me, wasn't rage. It was clarity. I hope you figure out who you are, without his money. Brianna, I said, I really do. But that's your journey, not mine. She nodded once. I saw something pass across her face. Not guilt exactly, but the beginning of it. The hairline fracture before the break. Patricia touched my arm lightly. Daniel was holding the door open. I walked toward them and didn't look back. Not because I was angry, but because for the first time I had somewhere to walk toward instead of just away from. Robert was standing at the bottom of the courthouse steps. He looked diminished. Not physically. He was still a broad man, still upright in that gray suit. But something structural had given way. His tie was loosened. His jacket hung open. Sandra sat in their car at the curb with her forehead against the steering wheel, engine running. I was halfway down the steps when he said the name he had assigned me. The name a judge had just struck from the record. Claire. I stopped. I turned. He looked at me the way he always had, like I was something he owned and couldn't quite calculate the value of. But underneath that, now, something else. Something that might have been fear, if Robert Harmon were a man capable of admitting to fear. After everything I did for you, he said, after 18 years under my roof, this is how you repay me. I stood there in the October sunlight in my navy blazer, and I felt for the first time the full weight of what he had just said. Because even now, even with the judge's ruling still ringing in the air, even with a forensic report confirming he had forged a man's signature to steal that man's daughter, Robert Harmon believed he was owed something. My name is Melissa, I said, and you didn't do anything for me. You did everything to me, and now it's over. I turned and walked down the remaining steps. Daniel was waiting by the Escalade, door open. He didn't say a word. He just held the door, the way you hold a door for someone you've been waiting 19 years to hold a door for. I got in. The door closed. And the last thing I saw through the tinted window was Robert Harmon standing alone on the courthouse steps, watching his investment drive away. I need you to stay for the final part, because 6 months later, what my life looks like now, what happened to them, and the one thing I need every single person watching this to hear, that is what the last part is for. Don't you leave yet. 6 months later. This is where I am now. I live in Richmond, not the bungalow in the Fan District with the red door, though Daniel offered it. I have a studio apartment off Gray Street. Tall windows, a lot of morning light. Sometimes I just stand there for a minute before I start my day. Just stand there and look at the sky. Because I spent 18 years in a room with no window. And now I need to see the sky when I wake up. It is that simple and that enormous. I am studying for my GED. I am also enrolled in the culinary program at the community college down the road. I know how that sounds. Robert made me cook every meal in that house for 18 years, and now I am choosing it. But that is the difference, isn't it? Between something done to you and something you decide to do. The ingredients are the same. The meaning is completely different. Daniel and I have dinner every Sunday at the bungalow. He is not a great cook. His specialty is overcooked salmon and slightly burned garlic bread, and he makes himself every single time. He sets the table for two. He asks about my week. He listens to the answer, really listens. The way you listen when you have 19 years of catching up to do, and you are afraid of wasting a single Sunday. We are not perfect. There are silences. There are moments when neither of us knows quite what to say, because you cannot recover 19 stolen years over dinner. But he is there, every Sunday, without fail. As for the Harmons, Robert and Sandra are awaiting trial. Forgery, fraud, child neglect. The house in the suburbs is under a second mortgage to cover the restitution payment. Robert was asked to resign from his position on the church board. He did not go quietly. Sandra, who cooperated with the investigation, may receive a reduced charge. Brianna moved in with a relative in another city. She got a job. Her first one. I hope it's the beginning of something real for her. I genuinely mean that. I go to therapy every Thursday. My therapist has a small office with a fig tree in the corner, and she never tells me how to feel. She just asks questions and lets me find my own answers, which, after 21 years of being told what to think, what to feel, what to call myself, feels like learning an entirely new language. And some days it is exhausting, and some days it is the most freeing thing I have ever experienced. Healing doesn't happen overnight. Some mornings I still wake up at 5 in the morning with my heart pounding, already mentally cataloging chores that no longer exist. The list runs through my head before I'm even fully awake, and then I open the curtains, and there's the sky, and I remember where I am, and I breathe. Oh, that breath. I have never taken that breath for granted since the day I first took it. Before I finish, I want to say something, and I need you to hear it. This story is not about revenge. I know it can look that way. The courtroom, the ruling, the restitution order, the referral to the district attorney. But revenge would mean I wanted Robert to suffer the way I suffered. And I don't. What I wanted, what I asked that judge for was the truth, because those are different things. Revenge is a fire you light, hoping it burns someone else. Accountability is just turning on the lights, so everyone can finally see what was already there. If you are in a family where you are tolerated instead of loved, where your presence is endured rather than valued, we have been taught that gratitude means silence and obedience means survival, I want you to hear this. You are not the problem. You were never the problem. The people who made you feel like a burden were carrying their own debts, and they put the weight on you because you were small enough to accept it. That was never your fault. Not for a single day. You deserve to know your own name. Family is not paperwork. It is not a court decree or an adoption file or a signature, forged or otherwise. Family is the person who sits with you while you learn to trust again. The person who says of course when you ask for proof instead of faith. The person who holds the door open and doesn't ask you to be grateful for it. Last Sunday, Daniel and I sat on the porch of the bungalow in the Fan District, the one with the red door. He was drinking coffee. I was reading. Neither of us was talking, and it was the most comfortable silence I have ever known. At one point, he looked over and said simply, "I'm glad you're here." And I said, "Me too. My name is Melissa Whitmore, and for the first time in my life, I know exactly who I am. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, if you've been someone's transaction, someone's silence, someone's story they never told, share it. You are not alone, not even close. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life, because these stories matter. Every single one of them matters. And if someone is still telling you right now that you should be grateful for being mistreated, you have permission to stop listening.